Hey, HannahMouse1 here. Welcome back to another paper clay video. In this one, I will be sculpting Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch based on the new Doctor Strange film, Multiverse of Madness. I say new when I'm recording this. This will be out a few weeks after, so yeah. I start off by making Doctor Strange, starting with his face. Obviously this is a very small scale model, so obviously I will not be able to get a true likeness of Benedict Cumberbatch. But I'm trying to go for the more stylized, comic book-esque version of Doctor Strange. And it's more about getting the main features across than looking like Benedict Cumberbatch. And yeah, I start off by just sculpting out the face, adding in the eyes, nose, mouth, ears, and even the form of the moustache. And then I start doing his hair, just creating a few basic forms. Because this is stylized, I'm not going to be using a mixed media for the hair. I'm just going to use the form of the paper clay to create that cartoony aesthetic. And then I start making his limbs, which are just very small, delicate pieces, which I have to do separately from the main body because otherwise they would absolutely just fall and break. Gravity is such an enemy when you're working with paper clay. So obviously to get them to be long and thin like this, you have to sculpt them and be able to lie them on a flat surface, which is harder to do if they're posed in a form. And yeah, then I start assembling everything. I use a blob for the neck, which I attach the head to the body. I do the same with the arms and the shoulders as such. And I try and get the pose as dynamic as possible, as though he's preparing to use his magic. And then I start doing his waist and adding to attach the legs to his hips sort of thing. And a lot of these joints you have to flesh out afterwards, otherwise it looks oddly skeletal, and just padding it out like there's actually flesh on there is super important, otherwise it's just weird. I use scraps of paper to make his cloak, and I just curl them around and fix them into place. Right now I'm doing the collar, which is pretty impressive on his outfit, where it flies up. I also put in a bit of form for the eye of Agamotto that he has around his neck. And then I use more paper to create the actual fabric of the cloak that falls down behind him. And I also add some more form in places before giving everything a nice paint job. This red paint is a nightmare to work with. It's some stupid kiddie brand I bought at like the local Wilco's or something. It's very transparent. It works though, it works, and it cost like £1 for like a pretty big bottle. I shouldn't have expected much. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool, and I use this really nice midnight blue colour for his, I don't really know what you called it, unitard? Jumpsuit thing. You also might notice that his outfit's not 100% accurate. Like the blue section should have like a bit of fabric that falls down behind him as well. I just didn't really notice that until I'd finished sculpting, and because this is so stylized, actually it was pretty good without the extra detail there. Please don't get mad at me. And then I start adding some details to his face, like his hair, eyes, moustache. And I then paint the eye of Agamotto with a nice metallic bronze before adding a bit of detail to his jumpsuit thing. And then I add in the pupils of his eyes and give everything a nice coat of matte Mod Podge to make it look perfectly polished and more complete, and to also protect the paint if it gets jostled or scratched, or it just adds a layer of protection there, and it keeps everything looking nicer for longer. So yeah, definitely worth doing this. And that is Doctor Strange complete, as you can see. So now moving on to Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, as first seen in Age of Ultron, with a completely different accent to what she has now. But yeah, obviously her character has changed, has evolved a lot in Phase 4, and I won't spoil anything because, you know, I don't want to, if you haven't seen it, I don't want you to be upset. But yeah, she has a lot of character development, as of WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness. And yeah, so I start off by just making her form. You might notice that I've sculpted the arms to be in this bent position. When I put them on, I actually twist them to be straight down. When I was putting it together, I felt that looked better than the way I had it. It felt more iconic to Scarlet Witch to have her arms down. I had them bent because often when you see pictures of Wanda Maximoff, she has them bent in front of her and doing magic between her hands. But for Scarlet Witch, she tends to have a more open position. So yeah, I add on her hands. I'm not super thrilled with how the hands came out on her. Working at this smaller scale is always a pain with really detailed pieces of form, and hands definitely qualify as very, very detailed. They are always such a pain to put together, but you know, I think I did a good enough job on them. I then add some form to her back where she was sculpted on a flat surface, so obviously a lot of the detail behind her was lost, so I just built that back up. Then I used these like twisted teardrops to create her very stylized fire-like hair that is swirling up around her face as though she's so powerful that even gravity is defying her. So yeah, I just add in all the form. Anywhere that looked a bit too plain or empty, I just added in another teardrop shape and built it up until it looked good. Then I add in parts of her costume, like her helmet, mask thing that she wears, the little fang things or horns that she wears. Then I create the back of her, the bit of fabric that flows from the back of her shirt bit, I guess. Her outfit's hard to describe if you don't know anything about costumes or textile design. It's all very stylized and pretty. I have no idea what any of it's called. Then for this bit I had to give it a nice layer of Mod Podge before painting because it was so flimsy that if I used a paintbrush on it, it would just push the form around, and that's not very conducive for good paint jobs. So yeah, I give everything a very red colour palette on this one. I wish I did the trouser legs a bit darker because it's almost exactly the same as her torso, but like it is meant to be darker, and it is slightly, it's just not super noticeable. I do her skin tone, and so that's just really the upper arms and her face because she's wearing gloves, and then her ginger brown hair. I think her hair's slightly browner than this. I did kind of amp up the gingerness, but it actually looks better with the fiery colour scheme to keep everything fiery and warm. And like I said, these are meant to be stylized, not necessarily like exact replicas of Elizabeth Olsen, who I believe plays Scarlet Witch. And then I add the details like her collar line and her eyes to make her come to life. Then I give everything a coat of matte Mod Podge, just as I did with Doctor Strange, just to give everything that finished, polished look, and like I said earlier, to keep her in mint condition. Doing all over her cape. You have to be careful with this sort of thing, like not to smudge the paint too much with the Mod Podge if it's not perfectly like stuck to the material, especially if you're using a smooth surface. That's very common. Oh, I love what I did with the base on this one. Instead of giving it a simple rectangle to stand on, I created a version of the Darkhold from Multiverse of Madness, and they're going to be standing on the pages of the Darkhold. Without spoiling anything, the Darkhold is basically an evil book that's on fire and corrupts people who read it, sort of thing. It's also very powerful, but I don't want to tell you what it can do. Watch the film, it's alright. And then I just quickly cover up all the holes in the cardboard first with paper because, you know, they're ugly. And then I used watered down PVA glue to build up tissues around the edge of the rectangle, because this is going to be the fire that's burning between the pages of the book. It's a really cool design, but like I mean the Darkhold, I don't know if I did it justice here, but like, yeah, the idea that the book's on fire is kind of cool to me, because obviously it's a book that's on fire is not going to last long, but this one's super magical and cool, so it kind of gets away with it. I then create these little rectangles of paper, which I scrumple up to make the pages look all worn and like unkept and like ragged. I mean, the book's on fire, the pages aren't going to be in mint condition, are they? So yeah, I then mix black paint with some water to create this dark wash sort of thing, and I dip the pages in to make them look a bit less pristine. Where some of the paint wasn't fully mixed in and just resting on the bottom creates this almost splotchy effect with the pages, and I really like that. It definitely looks like the pages are charred and like ghostly and haunted and destroyed. Yeah, basically they don't look good. Then I start drawing on the design with this very thin detail brush, and I start with a page that has the picture of Scarlet Witch on it. It doesn't have to be perfect, the pages won't be, they're not meant to be, they're supposed to look like a mess. And I create these little like tatters which I blur and smudge and basically throw into a state of disrepair. This page is harder to make out, but it does seem to have some sort of circle pattern down the side. So, you know, circles it is. Then I just go to town smudging everything on both pages, evidently just to make them look, because these are the top pages, they have to look the worst because they're the only ones you're going to be able to see properly, unless you're like really struggling to see through the sides of the pages, which would be a bit weird. But yeah, I then paint all the areas of the cover of the book in this almost black but with a hint of blue in there. The blue makes it look more realistic. Very few things are jet black in real life, and the blue just helps make it look more like the Darkhold. Then I start painting the fire. I give it a base of yellow. I don't do this perfectly. Some of the white of the tissue definitely shows through, but there's white in fire anyway, so it actually looks really good. And then I added some red, and just while the yellow is still wet, I just splodge the red on and allow it to mix and blur and just, yeah. To add the pages in, I create a nice line of matte Mod Podge down the middle of the book and stick one edge of the pages to it. So like it's only bound at the middle sort of thing to make it like an actual book. Sticking it at both ends would just look weird. Especially as these pages aren't flat, they are wrinkled and curved and well thumbed, I suppose, so they wouldn't necessarily lie flat, so it looks better for them to be like only attached at the middle, not perfectly flat on the surface. I then give the top pages a nice coat of matte Mod Podge because they need to be secure enough to have the characters stand on it. Originally I was going to have the characters stand facing each other, but then I remembered that because they take on a more adversarial role in the film, I should probably have them facing away, as though they are like facing opposite forces sort of thing. And that is them done. I am really happy with how this one came out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you did, so I know that this is something you're interested in, and I will see you next week. Bye!